All right, and there we go, and welcome everybody to this week's section on, or this week's edition of Building Sector Management. This is the first lecture, totally um, social. If you have a question, just ask the question, and we'll answer it right there and then. There's no real format to it, and as we go along, if you don't agree with something, just add your point of view, and we'll discuss it right there. All right, just remember these sessions are recorded, so try to keep it nice and clean and politically correct, and don't get me into any trouble with the university. If you catch my drift, you're allowed to have your opinion, so say anything you want against the government. All right, so there we go. Um, if we just look at the short history, and I just thought I'd put in this little slide about the history of construction and the industry in the world, and you can see it's been around for many years. If we think about where project management started, if we think to the Egyptian pyramids, those guys had to plan to bring those big blocks along the Nile. So it's about a 600k trip that they had to do, and they had to wait for the seasons to be in line with their planning. Because what they actually did is they floated these stones down to the right location. So in effect, it was a project management feat of its own, and through time, obviously, more and more things occurred, and obviously we saw quite a number of projects developing from that. The Suez Canal, also a great feat. There's been really a contentious issue in the 1950s as well, just after World War II in Egypt. So really interesting stuff that you can go up and read about that. Eiffel Tower, also interesting. A gift from, or a monument basically. And you all know the importance of that. More importantly is the two last ones that I've got on the list there, the newest projects in the United Arab Emirates, the Burj Al Arab and the Burj Khalifa. Now the Khalifa is the newest edition. That one is only recently opened in 2010. It's just lower than 900 meters, so at 838 for the structure, and about 870 with all the antennae on top of it. So it's really a big building. I was there in 2009, just before the final stages of construction occurred. So a really impressive project. These guys work 7 days a week, 24/7. They've got lights and everything. They typically accelerate during the winter months, because in summer months it gets up to about 60 degrees. What makes it a little bit more livable there is the humidity isn't as bad as northern and central Queensland, for instance. The Burj Al Arab, many people see this as a 7-star hotel. It's actually only a 5-star. You can't go more than 5 stars. But this one is also a monument to construction technology and techniques. Actually built by a South African group, Murray and Roberts. They decided in the late 1980s, late 1990 or early 1990s to move outside of the South African market, and they entered the Middle East. This project almost bankrupted them, because they could not take, or they did not take, the cultural effects into consideration. So all of the issues with people, labor, local labor, wasn't really considered when they priced on it. So they burnt their fingers there, lost quite a lot of money. But at the end of it, really successful projects. So if we look at the construction industry, and these figures are the newest ones, they've just been released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Looks at the construction industry, specifically the contribution to the economy. And what I'll do is I'll upload these slides for you, like I did in term 2, so you can download them together with the video later on. Alright, so you can see there that for the period 2008-2009, the total buildings was about 68,000, and that's remember, that's in millions. So add another 6 zeros to the end of that. That's quite a lot of money. It's sort of gone down in 2010, 2011. So Raymond and Tim, what do you think? Why did it go down? Do you think this is the delayed effect of the global financial crisis, or what do you
Yep.
guys think?
It is contributed by the global financial crisis. Um, That's just for housing, though, isn't it?
That's correct. Yes,
Those
this is yep.
figures.
This is only building approvals for housing. So obviously that's it's just residential stuff.
We
Yeah.
can also look into see if what the interest rate was then at that time, because I do believe it was quite high still, and then the first home buyers grant at that time was around the $7,000 or $6,000 mark, but it's been boosted now to I think 10 or 15.
Yeah, during around the just the during the economic stimulus thing, I believe it was up to about 21,000 as
Yeah.
part of the stimulus package for new houses.
That's correct. When I arrived in the country, I arrived sort of mid 2009. At that stage, if I decided to build a new house in Australia, I could get 21 grand from the government for that. And it wasn't all just from the federal or government, it was a combination between the two. I got 7 from, I think, the federal government and 14 from the state government, depending on the area that you're going to invest in. So, yep, I agree. I think the interest rates definitely played a role. First home owners grant definitely also. Do you guys know what the first home owners grant is at the moment?
I think I think it's been boosted. I think it's 10,000 for people that want to invest in property, and I think it's only slightly more for first home buyer. I think it's 15.
Yeah, yeah, 14 or 15,000. That's the last figure that I remember. I can't put my finger just on it at the moment, but I remember something about 14. So it might be in that region, Raymond. I agree with that. All right, so there we go. That's interesting to see how that happens and how it influences um, the economy. So if we look at the value of the construction work done for the same period, and once again, this is obviously also in millions, and these are new residential buildings. So private sector houses, I've split them there, and you can go and access these tables. There's really impressive information on the Bureau of Statistics website, and you might want to make a note of this. This is the table, or the index is called 1350, and it includes all the information about the gross domestic product and the different industries and the contributions to the different industries, as well as reference to the global standing of the economy. So yeah, interesting stuff. All right, so there you can see a little bit up in the last year, not much. Um, we can see that it sort of doesn't really correlate with the previous slide that we had, because the previous slide there's quite a big dip. This one is a slight up. So what do you guys think? What contributed to this growth in the industry? Or is that a difficult question to ask?
It's actually
Uh,
funny because I'm just trying to think of a reason for it because I work in the council up here and I do dabble in a bit with the building approvals.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yeah,
I
I
I haven't seen a lot of increase, but certainly what we have been seeing is houses of a greater value have been getting built,
Mm-hmm.
but we've been seeing a lot larger houses.
All right, so you see
yeah
larger structures, but not more structures.
Yeah.
yeah. When I was in the residential sector, during about around this time, I saw that there was a less amount of houses being built, but they were more expensive because the builders were doing less amount of work. Uh, they were trying to, I guess, cover their costs, so they kind of up their I guess
Profit
the
margin.
cost of constructing these houses.
All right.
Yeah,
So the things that,
yeah,
we might want to consider in this case will be, are the contractors starting to outsource their services, or are they increasing their markup as sort of a protection against uncertainty in the market? So those, I typically think that would be an issue that's contributing to the higher value but the lower number. And of course, also the increase in the cost of materials, that might also be um, an effect that we can't readily see in the figures. We might have to delve a little bit deeper, because it might be that because of reasons unknown, for instance, and I'm sure the carbon tax will have the same effect, GST, like it had a unintended consequence, and material prices, labor, transport, logistics, all of those aspects are influenced when it comes to construction materials. What do you guys think? You didn't expect to have these many questions posed at you this time of the night, eh?
No, I was just thinking of just a way to put it locally, because
Mm.
Townsville at the moment's a bit of a boom town.
Yeah.
We've also got a major port here, so really we don't see too many of the costs passed on to us because we're like a direct access
Mm-hmm.
to materials. But I frequent can up to Cairns.
All right.
And you see a lot of the costs do increase up there, petrol namely.
All right. So what do you
But
guys
I haven't.
pay? What do you guys pay for fuel up there?
We're 136 at the moment. Last time I was in Cairns, it was around the 140 mark for around the same period.
All right. So
That's
yeah,
that's pretty cheap.
yeah, that's really cheap because Tim, where are you? Are you're in Brisbane or where are you?
Or I live at Brisbane, but I'm in Sydney at the moment.
Oh,
Down in
okay.
Sydney, it's like $1.46. But last time I was up in Brisbane, it was about $1, 44 when I saw it. But yeah, $1.36. Geez, maybe I should take a trip up to
Yeah.
Townsville.
Well, I paid
Well,
I filled up my car on Sunday. I paid 162 in Rockhampton.
oh wow.
Yeah, so yeah, it's really expensive living in the middle of nowhere, and Rocky seems to be right in the middle of Queensland. So we're too far away from Brisbane, and we're too far away from Townsville and Cairns as well. So yeah, everything is a little bit more
Because I've got some
expensive.
friends that live in Mackay at the moment. They said their cost of living's really skyrocketing because of the mining around the place.
Mm, mm. Well, today I saw an article in the local newspaper for Murranbah, the little mining town not too far from here, that they're renting out houses for $3,200 a week. I mean, that's more than what I pay, more than twice what I pay for my house per month.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a lot of money. Yeah, the industry is
That
moving places. Yeah,
that's a riverside penthouse in Brisbane.
exactly, and that's what the article is all about, because they say, compare this place in the middle of nowhere, mining town, um, and it's more than what you get for a beach access or beachside property. It's really expensive. So based on that, we can see that it's really having an influence on the industry. And if you look at a town like Gladstone, they've seen increases of 150% in their rent in the last month. So if I tried to organize a conference there, and I couldn't get accommodation for myself for the next 8 months in any of the hotels. They're just fully booked. So yeah, the mines are definitely out there.
Is that in retrospective of the money that comes out of the mines? Like, obviously, the people at the mines are on pretty good money because it could be dangerous work. So everything around it becomes more expensive. I guess to cash in on that
Yes.
opportunity.
Well, the problem that's created by these high salaries. Remember, the rates that are paid currently in places like Gladstone and Maramba, the rent is typically paid by the mining company. So it's not really an out-of-pocket cost for the employee. And the mine wants the employee there, so they're willing to pay that. Now, the effect of that is the ancillary services that you see in these small towns. The policeman, the postman, the guy that delivers the milk in the mornings, the small cafe, the school teacher, those guys, their salaries have stayed stagnant and they cannot keep up with the rest of the industry. And you see those services starting to fall over because those people have to move away because they just cannot afford housing anymore. So in the long run, it's going to create a hassle for those smaller towns once the industries move away. Because when the industry moves away, or when the construction boom is complete and it's just a running concern, there's no ancillary services and infrastructure that's still running.
Okay, I never knew that. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, so it's just something to keep in mind. I mean, think about it, and maybe do a post in the forum about it if you thought about it some more, because it's really interesting to see how this is going to affect the big cities, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, those places, no danger at all. Perth, I mean, at the moment you pay $9 for a cup of coffee in the Perth airport because that's the going rate. That's what people earn. They expect to pay that for a cup of coffee. But if you really look at the smaller towns where the boom is occurring, that's where the long-term effects are going to be felt the most. So we'll see how it happens. I don't have any solutions at the moment, but we need to keep a close eye on it. All right.
Yeah, no, I think the 85 cents per week extra that the federal government wants to give the middle income earners to compensate for the how much the carbon tax is going to fall onto them, it's probably not going to be enough.
Well, there's a few funnies. Being new to Australia, I like to do a lot of research on these things, and 85. It's just not going to work. It's just I think the effect is going to be much larger. But something else that I did notice is because there's Rockhampton is a bit of a older community. There's a lot of old people that need to fly to the big cities for medical care, and Medicare at the moment only pays $35 a night if you have to fly from, for instance, Rockhampton to Brisbane for medical services. Because from the government's point of view, they have to make sure that everybody has access to the same medical services. So the government will pay for the airline ticket, and they'll make sure that the medical treatment occurs. But the accommodation they only pay $35 for. I don't know about you guys, but I can't remember when last I paid $35 a night. I think the last time was in 1994 when I was still a student traveling in Europe.
Yeah, no, that was like my share accommodation rent.
Mm.
We were like in a house of 10.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. All right, so interesting things. Let's compare the new residential building work, and there you've got the numbers there, 39,543. Let's compare that to the value of alterations. All right, so this is also still in the same table, and you can see the alterations is slightly more. All right, which is really interesting. So let's just go back one. 39,543, and if you look at the value of the alterations, that's 81,723, and obviously this is also millions. So strange enough, I would typically I would think that the impact of new buildings would be much more, but obviously because it's a brownfield project, it's much more expensive. What are you guys' opinion on that?
Just going back to the new buildings, one thing that comes into part of that is the cost of land. I don't know what it's like in other states, but in southeast Queensland, land is astronomical, really expensive. Like for a 700 square meter block of land in Caboolture is like $300,000. And what I saw during those time frames was that people were, I guess, buying into a house together and renovating it rather than building a whole new house by themselves. Ended up being cheaper from what I saw. And I saw a lot of families moving into a house together, and yeah, and of course, you can only fit so many people into a house, and I guess that's why alterations skyrocketed.
No, Tim, I agree. I think that's really a good point there that you just made. The cost of land over here, I can only speak about Rockhampton. It's really expensive. Last week I travelled down to Adelaide just to go and explore the country a little bit. Adelaide is really a nice city. It reminds me of other cities around the world, big streets, old buildings, nice architecture, really relaxed type of living, but not cheap. And trying to get anything in about a 20-minute radius from the city is difficult. So it's and strange enough, in Rockhampton, the cost of land is even more expensive than in Brisbane for some unknown reason, and I think it's because of all, obviously, once again, all the mines that's just around the region. Everybody sort of fly in and fly out to Rockhampton, so they fly out on a Monday to go and work on site, and then they come back to Rocky and then make Rockhampton their base. So interesting, we'll see where that goes. Alright, so there's the value of the alterations. We spoke about that briefly. If we look at the construction activity now, interestingly enough, the Australian Bureau of Statistics split between building and construction. So what do you think is the difference between construction and building?
Construction, I guess, is in relation to infrastructure type projects, and building is, I guess, like buildings.
Alright, yeah, that's perfectly right. That's the total construction. There's obviously all the infrastructure projects as well. So that includes mines, bridges, dams, gas to oil, gas to liquid, oil plants, anything like that. And then of course building is everything domestic. Alright, so 100% correct. And you can see it is a little bit of an upward trend. There's a bit of a concern over there. You can see that the blue line over there for the total construction on the infrastructure projects hasn't really been affected that much. There was a little bit of a drop off over there during the financial crisis. Of course, there you can see 2008. That's typically where the global financial crisis had its biggest effect. Let's see if I can grab a pencil and draw a line around it. So over there, that would typically be the most effect. But in that area there, not really a fall off. If you compare that to the domestic market, you can see there's a lot bigger influence over there. Something happened towards the end of 2010, and it sort of just fell down completely, and it hasn't yet recovered in 2011. So we'll watch this space. Do you think the interest rates will change before the end of the year?
No, I haven't really heard recently on the news saying that there's been a rise in housing approval. So I think if they try and reduce it again, you might see a little bit of interest and activity come back again.
I think most Australians are really scared to spend money at the moment. Everybody is holding their breath for there's talk of another global financial crisis. If you look at the stuff that's happening in Greece, and the US is also not in great shape. So I think everybody is sort of keeping their cards close to themselves to make sure that they don't run out of it. But yeah, interesting. We'll see where it goes. Fortunately, this course runs over December and January, so we'll see what happens to the market towards, say, the end of January, mid-February. Maybe we can have a look at it again at that stage. Alright, so interesting there. If we look at the impact on the gross domestic product for construction, what I've done is I've chosen a few, so agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and electricity, and I've deleted all the others so that we can actually see the stuff on the screen. And there I've kept construction. So you can see construction represents about 7% of the Australian economy, which isn't it's not too bad. If you really look at it, it's quite a lot of money that flows in and out of the economy. So it's an important sector. Your opinion on that? How do you guys think?
Well,
Yep.
well, I mean, everyone, like every one of those industries is important, but everyone needs a house, or roads need to be constructed. That's always going to happen. Whereas mining is, I guess, a bit of a supply and demand type industry.
That's correct. It's well, if you look at mining and manufacturing, each of those represent about 10% of the GDP. So, there's obviously a lot going in there. I think it's really a buzzword at the moment, and there's a lot of interest in it. So, Australia has a lot of untapped resources, and I think everybody's just realizing what's going to happen. I think the newest development is that we're going to now start selling uranium to India. That will obviously have an effect on on the GDP as well. More importantly, there's two things that caused the previous government to sort of topple over, and that's the introduction of GST and the sale of uranium to India. And now, once again, we see the same type of thing happening in the political arena again. We've got the introduction of the carbon tax, and once again, the same issue about selling uranium to India. So, interesting how these things tend to sort of repeat themselves, and it will be interesting to see what the effect is going to be on the next election. Have you guys got any ideas on the next election?
I don't know. I'm not too sure. I've only, in the news, it's only just been, you've been hearing about Labor a lot. There doesn't seem to be much of a response from the Liberal Party at the moment, so can't really make my decision yet.
Yeah, I think it's politics. It's one of those games. It's like chess. Whoever, or poker rather. If you can keep your face the longest, you sort of win at the end of the day. I remember I used to do direct selling, where I used to go into people's houses to sell them stuff that they didn't really want or needed. And at any point in time, when you want to close the sale, there would be a point where you just keep quiet, because the next person to speak would lose. Yeah, it would lose the argument basically. So, it would happen that I would sit in somebody's house for 10 minutes without saying anything, until they say, yes, I'll buy your little white oven. And they didn't really need it. So it's all about technique, and I'm sure the politicians know all about that as well. All right, so let's move on, the role of the construction industry, and if you look at the literature in Australia, it's basically based on the United Kingdom model, like most of the things that we see around, and it consists of different role players or stakeholders, clients, employers, and in this area over there, there's can obviously be the government can fit in there, the federal, state government, local municipalities, all of them can be clients. We see a lot of work being done in the infrastructure market at the moment, so oil and gas, those types of areas are really lucrative. Design, the professional team, so this includes everybody that belongs to the professional team: architects, building designers, planners, logisticians, quantity surveyors, engineers, the different disciplines that we have in there. And then the construction, this is actually the contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, all of those different role players that we have in the market, they come into play there. And then a section which isn't really part of or directly part of the construction industry is the maintenance and renewal. It is part of it, but it's sort of to the one side, and it rejuvenates older buildings. And this is why what Tim said earlier, I think, Tim, you said that people would rather buy an older house and revamp it to their standard and their liking, because it will be cheaper and it will include the cost of the land, which is really a great point that you've made there. All right, so if we look at what goes where, there's basically three classifications for the construction industry in Australia: residential, non-residential, and engineering or infrastructure. Basic and simple, single, multiple dwellings, anything basically that's not commercial and not engineering fits into residential. All right, and that includes the renovations and alterations to existing structures. If we look at commercial buildings, obviously everything else, shopping centers. Where would you guys put a hospital, for instance? Would it be non-residential or would it be infrastructure?
Non-residential.
All right. Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
think it'd be infrastructure.
Yeah, why do you say
Like,
that?
typically it'd be a state or federal government funded project, um, and then what would happen is it could end up being privatized or like run by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Uh, what about in terms of PPP? That's a privately funded type project that eventually gets handed over to the government. How I saw the engineering was something that fits out, that isn't really so much a building. It's something totally different. I mean, that's how I understand it.
Yep, I tend to agree there. I see infrastructure projects more as yeah, structures that's not related to people at all. You know, it's manufacturing, processing, railways, bridges, that type of thing. I'll have a think about Raymond's argument there about the hospitals being an infrastructure, but I don't see myself going there anytime soon. I like the point that Tim, you made about the PPPs. We can there's a lot of opportunity there, especially where government's running out of cash. You know, you can get the private sector involved there as well. And what I've seen in the past in both the US and Africa is infrastructure projects and other projects like jails, toll roads, bridges, dams. All of those turned out to be really good PPP projects because looking at the different types of handovers that you get, the build, operate, and train, or build, operate, transfer, all of those different scenes that you can get in PPPs. It depends on how much money you can make out of it, and for a private company looking at a toll road, for instance, if they um, can make money out of a 50-year lease out of that toll road, it's good money for them. The bad part is that asset only transfers back to the state after 50 years. So it needs to be in good quality at that stage. So there needs to be a maintenance program. All of those issues you need to think about. All right.
You also have to run the risk of it not making money in terms of, prime example would be the Clem 7 tunnel.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that one.
Mm. Yeah, I've actually been through that Clem 7 tunnel. Apparently, it's the only tunnel in the country where you can lose your license in one single go if you exceed the speed limit because there's so many cameras there. Are they not making enough money on that?
The original company that took it over almost pretty much, I think they declared bankruptcy because no one uses the Clem 7. I mean, the first day it opened, a car broke down and it was pretty much gridlock
Mm.
going northbound. Um, yeah, I've used it a couple of times, and once the airport link comes up and running, it might start making money. But I mean, even from the get go, they reduced the toll amount.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think initially, what was it? Initially, it was $4. Then it dropped down to $2, and I remember we sometimes get the news clips up here as well. So I remember there was a big hoo-ha about the high rates that they had. All right, well, let's move on. So, if we look at this industry and many of the points that we're going to see here, you guys have already identified, which makes it really interesting. Finance and economic development that drives our construction industry. If you look at it, why are contractors in business? It's about profit. Profit's not a dirty word, so they need to make it, and if they can make a few dollars on the sides, obviously they're going to go for it. And economic development, obviously also the government has a vested interest in this. 7% of the GDP goes into this industry, so there's a lot of cash to be invested and made out of it. Community needs, infrastructure, hospitals, schools, anything like that needs to be serviced. And of course, that together with immigration, demographics, the growing population, that's something that we have to keep in mind. At the moment, Australia's got about 25 million people. It's really a big country. There's space for many more. The thing is, are we developing fast enough to support all of these new additions to the population? So, interesting questions. Developing industries, oil and gas, gas seam, the new technology that we see is developing. Obviously, that's also driving the industry, and then of course mining, really booming. Technology, the construction industry traditionally is not a fast-moving industry in terms of technology. It's not like IT or anything like that, or fluid dynamics where we have new technologies every 2 months. most of the stuff that we deal with have been around for a few years. If you think something like concrete, been around for ages. The techniques that we have for constructing houses, all of that stuff has been around for a while, so it would be interesting to see if we can get that going. The new political thing there, or religious thing almost, environmental awareness, going green. This is where the BCA, or the National Construction Code, like you said, really forces everybody to go green and sustainable as far as possible. So that's the new thing that's going to, I think, affect the cost of the industry as well. Anything that you guys want to add on this slide?
None that I can think of, no.
All right. So if we look at the importance of the industry in terms of politics, as I say, we represent about 7% of the GDP. So in terms of contribution to the government's big plans, obviously they have to keep it in mind. It's almost as big as mining and infrastructure. It's about double the size of the agriculture market. So it's really a big thing for them to keep the construction industry alive and keep them happy. All right. So that's why you'll see that I put down over here, it's labor intensive, and there's obviously union action, and that's why in this week's weekly discussion point I had that question about the unions, because I wanted to see what you guys have experienced with the unions. Has it been detrimental, has it been positive? Because for everybody it's different. All right, so that's one of the important things that we have to keep in mind with the industry. What drives it? What's the main forces that sits behind it? All right, and then of course the most common problems that we face in this industry that we sit in is unrealistic expectations. We typically see contractors selling what they cannot make or produce, so it's overselling and under-delivering, and that's a common problem. And typically another problem that we have is that the client is his own worst enemy. He thinks he knows exactly what he wants, but he doesn't have a scope defined, and of course that leads to additional costs. And the same for the contractors. Many contractors will take on work just to stay in business without the necessary planning or resources, and that later on falls over. And then of course moving the goalpost, misunderstanding the roles of responsibilities, who fits in where. Those are just the typical ones, and what we'll do is later on next week we'll start talking about these in more depth. Alright, so that's basically what I wanted to say about the introduction to the construction industry and where we are at the moment. So the next thing that I want to tell you guys is, remember, assignment number 1 is due quite soon. It's due on the 27th, which is about 10 days from now. Important, if anybody is thinking about dropping the course, the census date is also coming up. I think it is next week. So the 22nd, think about that if you have overloaded yourself. All right. The Parkinson's principle that I want to explain to you is basically the more time you have available for a specific task, the more time that task will take. All right. So I know you guys have 10 weeks in which, 10 days in which to complete the assessment. That doesn't need that you need to wait until the last hour of the 9th day to complete it. Alright, so if we look at your probability, this is typically, if you're really enthusiastic, the most likely duration. However, taking into account the Parkinson's principle, you'll see that our possible duration moves out quite a lot. And there, of course, there's my favorite slide, the student syndrome. I would almost say that's tonight. Everybody is really excited and ready to do their assignment and get it finished and over and done with. However, by, let's say, Saturday, you sort of lose interest, and you lose interest until the Sunday, or the Sunday afternoon or so. And then suddenly there's this huge influx of effort. Alright, so Tim, do you guys agree with that, or not really? Hasn't this ever happened to you?
Oh yeah, that's my work model right there.
Well, I mean, I'm exactly the same. I just do much, you perform much better under pressure. And it's not the right way of doing it, of course, but that's just how we live, So oh well. All right. So assignment number one, a few suggestions for you guys. Basically, I've given you the 18 bills over there. So what you might want to do is for your assessment, start with the carbon tax in Australia. What's it all about? How will it work? Give me a nice introduction. Make sure that you understand how it's work and put it in your own words. So Davis Langdon and all of those guys, they are out there. They've got a lot to say about it. Make sure that the Davis Langdon information that you find on the web is up to date. Some of the stuff that's on their website might be a little bit dated. And as you said earlier on, sometimes it might be difficult to find the right resources. If you struggle, use the forum. All right, there's many students in this class, so put it on there. I know that there's many students out there that's already got the information, so see if you can share that around. All right, and then of course for each of those 18, just a short synopsis of what they will do. But the real question is, of course, which of these will have the most profound impact on your work in the building sector? All right, and what I've done there is I've just highlighted a few keywords that you need to remember. So a detailed report, so make sure that it's in the right format. I'm all about formatting. You can score a few marks just by submitting an assessment item that's in the right format. The impact, basically what I'm telling you is to choose one or two of these bills and say this is the impact that it will have, and the reason I chose this is because it's going to be the most profound, and then explain why you've made that choice and what you see the downstream effect of that bill is going to be. Alright, so there we go, that's about it. Any questions from you guys?
Will this be the slide be available later on?
Yes, I'll put it up tomorrow, Tim. So if you go back to the website tomorrow, it takes about an hour and a half to render the video. So I'll do that tonight. I'll set my machine to start doing it, and then I'll go home, and so I'll put it up tomorrow. So if you come to the website, say by 10 o'clock or so tomorrow morning, it should be there, and it will be in the tab that says weekly online sessions. So you can just access it from there. Alright. Alright, any other questions?
No, I think I'm pretty right. Thanks, Josh. You've definitely sparked my interest now. So that graph from before probably doesn't apply anymore. There's a couple of spikes in there. Now that we've got like a sort of format to work off, no, that's really helpful.
Alright, so no, it's excellent that, yeah, I'll put these up, and hopefully it will help you along. And of course, if you guys have any questions, I'd like to hear from you if you want to post it onto the forum, or if you give me a phone call. If there's a need, I'll record another video, anytime, or we'll do another class. It's really no hassle. Alright, so make it easy for everybody to have a good time while they learn.
Okay, no worries, thank you.
Alrighty, so what I'll do is I'll end the session, and I'll see you guys next Thursday.
No worries. Well, thank you very much for that, Josh.
Alright, see you, Raymond. See you, Tim.
No worries, see you later.
Okay, bye.